Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Adventure Metrics podcast. I'm Matt Horwitz.
I'm Scott Brills.
And we have an awesome guest today. I'm proud to bring on Graham Hughes, an adventure filmmaker, travel blogger, and TV personality who's most noted for being the first man in the world to visit every country without flying. Graham,
that's true.
Pleasure to have you on, man.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Scott. Hello.
Yeah.
So every country in the world, that's 193, I think it's members of the UN, plus the additional territories, countries, et cetera, totaling 201 international borders / sovereign states or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's 193 members of the United Nations. And then you've got places like Taiwan, which used to be a member of the United Nations. You've got Vatican City and Palestine, which have special observer status. You've got Western Sahara, which is not a member of the UN, but it is a member of the African Union, unlike Morocco. So the African Union's got 53 members. And so because it's a member, I thought I'd go there. And finally, Kosovo, which used to be part of Serbia, former Yugoslavia, and that's recognised by over 100 countries around the world as a sovereign territory. And then I counted the four home nations of the United Kingdom, England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, as four different entities, just to keep my Scottish friends happy. I've got family over in Wales as well. And I had a nice round total of 200 at the time. And then South Sudan became an independent nation while I was travelling. So the country count went up to 201. But I also went to about 16 territories, places like Martinique, Faroe Islands, American Samoa, Guam, which aren't independent states, but they're quite difficult to get to, some of them. So I'm quite proud about that as well.
Wow, so much to open up here. Graham, you're a pretty fascinating guy. We've been doing a bunch of research on you. But tradition has it on our show. We have to do our digital cheers.
Yep.
Cheers.
Wait, what's everyone drinking?
Cheers.
Tea, because I'm British. Cheers.
Well, but what type of tea? What type of tea? That's what's important.
Tea. There's just tea. American coffee outlets like to call this English breakfast tea to make us seem like weirdos for wanting tea when it's our national beverage. And it's kind of like, what type of beer are you drinking? I don't care. It's beer. This is tea. And
I hardly disagree with that.
You have varieties of tea where you can have your lapsang, shushang, whatever. That's fine. I don't mind. But this is real tea. It comes in tea bags. It's black tea. You have to put milk and sugar in. And some countries just don't understand tea. French-speaking countries generally don't understand tea. America doesn't understand tea. I was in Lebanon in a coffee place, with all like 100 different types of coffee from around the world, big barista machines, and asked for a cup of tea. They looked at me like in just absolute horror, and I was like, "Te ole," which I believed meant tea with milk, and they gave me a glass, not a cup, a glass with some warm milk in it and a tea bag in the warm milk, and I was just like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" Ended up drinking a latte. Latte. Anyway, so tea.
Fun.
Yes, I've traveled with English people before. I know how seriously you take your tea. I mean, we even at Burning Man
was built on it. Well, one of the reasons why the British stuck around in certain of their colonies longer than other colonizers, like in South India and Kerala, the Dutch were there, the Portuguese were there, the French were there, and they were all kicked out after a while because they tried to convert people to Christianity. They tried to change the language, so they spoke French rather than the local language of Kerala. But the British just turned up and let people generally do what they wanted to do, didn't force anything down their throat. And their attitude was, as long as they make a decent cup of tea, they can worship any god they like, which I think is a good way of conquering the world. Not that colonization was a good idea, because obviously it wasn't. Disclaimer.
Awesome.
Disclaimer. British guilt there coming out. Sorry, world.
Yes, it's so British. Just say sorry.
All right, switching gears on a serious note, Graham. You mentioned something that's really interesting in a lot of your videos. You say it's not about the government or the people that are running the country, but it's about the people and it's about those experiences. And I think that was a big part of your travel. Like you stay and you hang with locals almost everywhere you go. Is that not the case?
Yeah. I was couch surfing, so it was locals or people, or maybe who are expats or charity workers, NGO workers who had lived in the country for a year or longer and really knew the lay of the land, history of the place, politics, which is fascinating, and the good places to go out drinking, obviously, which also helps. And it was just a really great experience of being able to get a sort of snapshot of the world as we are, and I've come out of it. After visiting all these places and staying and traveling, I've come out of it with a really positive outlook. look on the future of humanity, there's a few things that we've really got to worry about. Global warming being the number one. For our generation, that's going to be our war. That's going to be our big challenge to rise to. But as far as sort of peace is concerned, at this moment in time, there's technical wars like North and South Korea still technically at war. But when it comes to two countries shooting each other across a border or something, there's no two countries at the moment doing that. We've got civil conflicts going on, obviously, in Syria. We've got problems in Mexico with the drug war. But the world is becoming incrementally more peaceful, and we don't really get the perspective on this because a lot of our information comes from the news, which is going to be all the bad news. It's going to be like some people are blown up in located in Baghdad or wherever today, and so it skews our view of the world. Most people aren't terrorists. Most people are just like you and me, and they just want to have a nice hot cup of tea and a cuddle and maybe a mobile phone, and most people are happy. Yeah. As long as you can play Angry Birds or Minecraft.
Let's unpack the. You traveled around you visited every country without flying. Break that down for people that are listening and watching. Like, what were the logistics and the rules of this trip? When did you go? Yeah. Started in 2009.
I say, why did you go? Like, what prompted you to do this? Let's start with that.
I love travel. I mean, I've always loved travel ever since I was a kid. We used to go on these camping holidays around Europe with my family, and used to go to these crazy little countries like Liechtenstein and Monaco and Andorra that no one had heard of, which are little micro states in Europe. And I just found it really exciting to come home at the end of a trip. We've been around Europe for 5 weeks, and my friends have been, to Spain. And what did you do on your holiday? Well, I did all these exciting things. I was in Eastern Europe just the summer after the wall came down, and so I got to get my piece of the Berlin Wall. Huh. We visited Czechoslovakia as it was then, Hungary, Poland. So I'm telling my friends about going to Poznan and all this kind of stuff, and Gdansk. And they're like, where are these places? This is when I was sort of 10 years old. And there was a show on British TV, which you may have seen on BBC America or something, called Michael Palin's Around the World in 80 Days, where he tried to emulate Phileas Fogg's journey around the world in 80 days. And the rule for him was no flying, and he did it. He did it in about 79 days, I think. And it was just a great series. And the sort of the point where everyone got really into it was when he took this wooden dhow over from Saudi Arabia or the UAE, from Dubai, I think, over to India, and he was stuck on this wooden boat for sort of 5 days, and he just had an absolute nightmare on it. He got really ill. It was just really interesting to watch someone actually suffer as they travel, because a lot of the travel shows are very glossy and they're very staying in these 5-star resorts, so it felt a lot more real. And that inspired me to come up with this plan of going to every country in the world, because I remember as a child saying to my mom, is he going to every country? And she was like, no, he's just going around the world. So I went, well, how many countries is he going to go to? And I think he went to about 13 countries. I was like, that's not enough. I want to see him go everywhere.
Upstart.
And as I got older, I did a lot of backpacking. I'd been to about 70 countries before I started on the Odyssey expedition. And so that really gave me the experience of traveling overland through India, Southeast Asia, South America, obviously through Europe, it's on my doorstep. And I felt like this is possible. It could be done. I took the concept to a few newspapers in the UK, most notably The Guardian, and they just looked at me like I was a weirdo and said, it's impossible, you won't do it. You'll get killed by some, by some kid in Sierra Leone, whatever.
That'd be a great headline for the
Guardian. Yeah. They were weird. They were sort of like, you can't go to Burma because we can't promote tourism in Burma. And I could say, well, why can't I go and say it's terrible? And they're like, no, we can't. And I'm like, oh. So we can go to every country in the world except for Burma. And they're like, yeah. And now things have changed in Burma and it's opened up a lot. And by 2015, we're hoping that Aung San Suu Kyi will be leader, we hope. But, things change, things get better. And I took the concept to Lonely Planet in Australia, and they really loved it because I'd done all my research basically drawing from Lonely Planet guidebooks. I had sort of like a 27-page dossier of how to get from one country to the next without flying, visa regulations, shipping times, bus times, and all this kind of stuff. And they said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So then I talked to Guinness World Record and said, what are going to be the rules on this? And they said, okay, we're fine with you doing it, but the ground rules are going to be, obviously you can't fly, but also you can't drive, and you can't take private transport over large distances because you could pay the driver to drive faster, which, given my experience of trying to bribe the driver to drive slower and on the correct side of the motorway in Nigeria, I just find it hilarious. It's like, no, I think it was faster using public transport than it would have been. And also I could sleep on the public transport and I'd wake up somewhere else. So that was kind of fascinating. And also I got to share a journey with the local people, which I thought was fantastic. You'd always get chatting. I was traveling on my own and on a shoestring budget. I didn't have a big logistics team with me. I didn't have a couple of jeeps following me to make sure I was all right. It was literally on my own. Lonely Planet flew in a camera operator for a few days of my journey just to get some shots that weren't me holding the camera at arm's length. That's it. And so they were the ground rules. They were formulated by me and Guinness World Records, and I kept to them religiously. And sometimes it would have been a lot safer for me to drive myself, as in Nigeria. Which is like Mad Max. The roads, there's just burnt out cars everywhere, and that's just obvious. The crashes. I actually filmed the crash happen because it was so a big articulated lorry went into the side of one of these little minibuses. That I wasn't on that minibus, but the minibuses are called maulers because they just get smashed up so much. And I went from Lagos to Calabar, which took all day. I left at about 5 a.m. and didn't get in until about 10 in the evening, so it was a long journey. And it was very, very terrifying. In the end, I just closed my eyes. But one of the funny things was that the music they were playing was absolutely awful. It was all like soft rock. It was all like Elton John and Celine Dion. And I'm thinking, oh, God, I don't want to die till my heart will go on from Titanic. Anything but that. Anything. Just actually, no, I'll take that back. I wouldn't bother. I'm just a Bieber. Anyway, so yeah, that was the plan. That's why I got into it, and a lot of people said it was impossible, and my original plan was to do it in a year, and then and that became sort of 18 months because of hurdles along the way, and then it sort of transformed into a 4-year real odyssey, 4-year journey of the soul, and it was just incredible. I mean, in the first 2 years I was traveling, I went to 184 countries. I got all the way from Uruguay, so I started in South America, Caribbean, Central America, North America. I headed over the Atlantic on a cargo ship to Iceland, Faroe Islands, down into Europe, then down the west coast of Africa, up the east coast. I'm saying it like that was simple. It took me a long time. And then through the Middle East, through Central Asia, through the Indian subcontinent, to the Far East, down into Southeast Asia. And I got all the way to East Timor and then to Papua New Guinea. And at the end of the second year, I only had 16 at the time, because South Sudan hadn't become a country by then. 17 countries left to visit, and it took me another 2 years to go to those 17 countries because they were islands and they were just so hard to get to. And even on my plan of how to get to these places, the Pacific was left to last, and it just sort of got to Papua New Guinea, and there was just a big question mark on the list of countries I needed to go to in the Pacific. There's about a dozen countries that I needed to visit, and it wasn't easy.
But what were the logistics for doing it? I mean, like 2 years. Like that's a huge amount of time. Like I can't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the third year of my journey, at the beginning of the third year, I got terrible news from the UK that my sister had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I flew back to the UK. I was, put my flag in the ground and said, right, I've got to come back to this spot to continue my journey, which I'd already spoken to Guinness about and said, can I leave and come back? I said, yeah, as long as you don't take a plane as part of your journey, there's a family emergency, you go home. So I went home for a few weeks and to be with my sister. She passed away, and then after that it took a long time for me to sort of want to get back on the horse and start the Odyssey expedition again. I went back to Australia. I was staying with my then girlfriend in Australia, and I sort of maxed out my visa basically because I needed that push to sort of finish this thing. So it wasn't until September that I returned to Papua New Guinea to continue the journey. Wow. So and then the logistics were, I got a cargo ship from with the Swire company from I got a cargo ship from Lae in Papua New Guinea. That took me to the Solomon Islands. That's Australia. From Australia, I hitched a ride on a cruise ship, which took me to New Caledonia, which is part of France, which is really go to, but then it took me to Vanuatu, which I didn't need to go to, and then to Fiji. Then I got on another cargo ship, which was a PIL ship, and that took me from Fiji up to Wallis and Futuna, which are French islands, didn't need to go to, but hey, added them to the territory list. Then it took me to Tuvalu, and then it took me to Kiribati, and then the Marshall Islands, and then back to Fiji. Then the same company took me on a ship that went to Samoa, American Samoa, Tonga, New Zealand. Then I took a cruise ship, another hitch ride on a cruise ship, back to Australia. And then I headed to Brisbane and got on a ship that took me to Nauru. But it went to the Solomon Islands first and Kiribati first. So 2 places I'd already been to. I had to go to them again just because of the loops of the ship. It's just the routes they went. And so a lot of places I ended up going to twice on this journey. Some places I ended up going to 3 or 4 times.
How do
Saudi
you...
Arabia. I think I went to Saudi Arabia 9 times in this journey.
I mean, how do you go about booking a ride on a cargo ship? I've got to admit, I've looked into this before, but I've never done it. Really?
It's difficult. You need to talk to the company that chartered the ship. They're the best people to talk to first. So they could be CMA CGM in France, or they could be Maersk in Denmark, or it could be PIL in Singapore, and try and get them on board. But you need to get permission from the charterers, the owners, the master of the vessel, and also the local port agent. I had one instance, I won't tell what country it was, but the owner had said I was allowed on the ship, the master had said I was allowed on the ship, the captain had said it. The charterers had said, yeah, it's fine. So, the owners were in Greece, the charterers were in France, the captain was on the ship in the country was. The local port agent just didn't seem to like me very much. I don't know. And he blocked me getting on. I was like there with my backpack, like, right, ready to get on the boat now. And he's like, no, you're not getting on. And I was like panicked, I needed to get this connection or we'll be lost. So it was a case of just talking to the companies. Now, I was making a TV documentary for the National Geographic Adventure Channel, which was being produced by Lonely Planet and distributed by the BBC. So that was a huge plus for me, because it gave them a bit of publicity, a bit of mileage, and letting me on the ship. I was raising money for the charity Water Aid. I raised over $10,000 for Water Aid on this journey. And so there was the charity angle. It's a good news story. And what I found, and this is a little tip to anyone who's going to try and get on cargo ships to travel, because it's a wonderful way of traveling. You really get to disconnect from the world because there's no internet, no telephone coverage.
That sounds horrible. Oh my God, no, I can't do that.
No, it's nice. In this modern world, just for a few days, just to really disconnect, it's nice. If you're looking through the company website to try and find who to talk to, look for someone who's got captain in their name, because that means that they've done their stint on the ships and now they're working in an office. And they know what it's like being out at sea and having to do a night watch where you're standing there for 4 hours on the bridge or 6 hours at a time with no one to talk to, nothing to do. You're in pitch darkness because you've got to turn the bridge lights off, and you just sit there looking at the radar screen, hoping that a big whale doesn't come along or something. And to have someone else on the bridge, having a chat, having a coffee with, it makes all the difference. It makes a journey to them a lot more enjoyable than your usual sort of, your usual sort of daily grind. But I spent a lot of time on ships on this journey. I hitched rides on four cruise ships. I hitched rides on over 20 full-length container ships. One of them was so big, it was a Maersk ship, and it was post-Panamax, which means it's too wide to fit into the Panama Canal. And it had 6,500 containers on board. Just to give you some perspective on that, if that was on a train and all the containers were end-to-end, the train would be over 25 kilometers long, which is just insane. That's on one ship. And it burnt about $185,000 worth of fuel a day to get this stuff. Just the logistics, the numbers of these things. And what I learned quite quickly is we really rely on these ships to get our stuff in and out. If imagine if all the actors in the world, or all the filmmakers, or all the lawyers went on strike. Right? All the lawyers in the world go on strike tomorrow. It'd be a bit inconvenient, I guess, for businesses and stuff, for people contesting wills, but we wouldn't all starve to death. Whereas if these guys on the cargo ships just went, right, down tools, we can't be bothered with this anymore, we're fed up with this Somali pirate nonsense, we would be in real trouble, because the way the world is at the moment is a lot of countries can't feed themselves, and we're completely reliant on these guys to bring us soft food, as well as iPods and creature comforts and things.
Right.
I think it's so interesting, Graham, that as like, you know, you probably knew that you were going to get certain benefits from this trip, but like on a side note, you've gotten extremely intelligent. Like you're pretty well versed in the world. Your geography is down pat. And, like, you know a lot about cargo ships. I know that
you want me on your pub quiz team.
This is part 1 of 4, just to let everyone know.
I was doing an interview for a British radio show in London, and they were testing me, and they tested me on which side of the road people drive on, and I got them all right. And then the last one was they said Samoa, and I said, well, they used to drive on the right, but a couple of years ago they changed and now drive on the left. And they went, oh no, on our thing it says right. And I said, no, check it online. They now drive on the left, and they checked online. Okay, yes, they drive on the left. Damn you! So yeah, if I'd love to do a celebrity who wants to be a millionaire, but I need to be a celebrity first, and then I can get my charity $1 million. I think. £100, which is worth even more.
Being on the show is the first step.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about the. I think going back to like your. Like that you really had really positive experiences with the people. There's a nice story about you sitting behind a woman, like countries where people would perceive things to be horrible. Like in this case, I believe it was Iran. You were on a bus and there was an old woman in front of you, and she turned around and what did she give you? And tell me that story.
Well, Iran was a delight. It really was an unexpected delight as well, because me, like you, we just get the information from the news, and Iran seemed like a terrible place where only bad things happen, and you've got this, you know, they've got a system where you can't express yourself freely. And I thought it to be a very conservative country like Saudi Arabia is, or Jordan, where people don't really come and talk to you so much. It's not very warm in that same sort of way, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I stepped over the border into Iran from Afghanistan actually, and it was just everything changed. Like everyone was just crowding around to try and help me out. There was a family that were in my shared taxi on the way to Mashhad, and they made sure that I got on the train, even though my cash cards wouldn't work and the ATM machines over there. They wouldn't exchange my US dollars because the US-Iranian relations aren't great. They found someone that would exchange my dollars, and they bought the train ticket for me to get to Tehran. I got to Tehran and got chatting with some guys there when I was in the Indian embassy for getting my visa, and they invited me back to their place. They had a bottle of wine, and had a few friends round. A few girls came round, and it was so cute. They got out the wine, and it's really hard to get alcohol in Iran because it's illegal. And he said, "Oh, my uncle brought this over from France a few months ago, and I've saved it for a special occasion." Wow. And he went, "Oh, how do we open it?" And I pulled out the Swiss Army knife and and I remember we ended up having some wine. They said, let's go for a kebab. So we went for a kebab, and I'm walking back with one of his mates, and he says, you know, what music have you got on your computer? You know, I said, oh, you probably won't like it. It's all like British rock and roll stuff. And he said, you've got any Radiohead? And I'm like, oh my God, I've got like every Radiohead album. He's like, they're my favourite band. And we all start singing Creep. So I'm walking along, a little bit tipsy in Tehran with a kebab, singing Radiohead songs. And I'm just like, wow, this is the world. This is amazing. And then a few days later, I'm on this overnight bus, and just to come to Matt's story here, there was a little old grandmother, a little Persian grandmother sitting in front of me. She must be like in her 80s or even older, I don't know. And she was talking on her phone. She didn't speak a word of English. And then she turned around and sort of waved to me between the seats, and I sort of go, hello. And she gives me her phone, you know, quite timidly, just sort of, here you go, can you take this? And so I take it off her. And I'm like, she's like, put it to your ear, So, okay. So I thought she wanted some help, you know, maybe to how to use the phone. So I put it to my ear. And the guy on the other end, perfect English, says, hi, my name is Saeed Hussein. You're sitting behind my grandmother, and she's called me specifically because she's concerned about your welfare, your well-being. And I said, you know, what's the problem? He said, well, the bus gets in very early tomorrow morning, gets in about like 5:30 in the morning, and she's worried that you'll have nowhere to go and nothing to eat for breakfast. So she wants to know if it's okay with you for her to take you home with her so she can cook you breakfast in the morning. Would that be okay? And I was just like, oh. It's like, you know, faith in humanity restored at that point. And that's one of my favourite stories. And it's just one of many amazing experiences that I had of just sheer generosity of people who took me under their wing. And
to be fair, though, she did kill you. It wasn't. Yeah. So just be careful, everyone. People are out to get you.
Just be careful. But there's a Bedouin or a Bedou saying, which is always be good to strangers, because one day you might be the stranger.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we as humans sort of live by that mantra, the better the world will be. And coming from Europe, where I come from, Liverpool is a very, very friendly city, amazingly friendly. People will just come over and talk to you. Whereas London is not. London is very cold and very inhospitable. I like London. I love it as a city. It's a real world city. There's people from everywhere there. But you try and strike up a conversation with someone on the underground, and they just think you're a massive weirdo. Like, they just look at you like, "What are you doing? Look at me, what do you want?" And
make him stop. Make him stop.
Yeah. I had a friend who grew up in London. He came to visit in Liverpool. It was the first time really in Liverpool, and I remember I went to the corner shop to buy a Coca-Cola and a Mars bar, and had a chat with the shopkeeper. And then on the way out, my friend's like, "Do you know that guy?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Why'd you talk to him then?" I'm like, "Oh, you're so London."
Graham, I think your stories there's so much to go into, man. Like, I knew about you beforehand, and I looked at more stuff last night, and I'm just like, holy cow, what there's like, I got a couple pages over here of just like I got 4 pages of just like really interesting stuff. But you spent, let's switch gears. Let's talk about, I'm sure that like every time you go on mainstream press, they're always like, wow, what was the worst part? And like, you've been jailed in the Congo. You've been, where else? I have it down here somewhere. You were arrested in like 2 or 3 places. I think one of the really interesting things is when you took a boat from West Africa to Cape Verde, you were in this like ghetto dugout canoe with like a motor and like 10 guys that didn't speak English. And it took you like 10 days. And there's a video of you being like you're sleeping and you're like, my hair's wet, my sleeping bag is soaked, like I'm sleeping on a life vest, like I'm vomiting, like this sucks. There's just like tell me about that boat expedition, because that's an interesting interesting one.
It was actually 4 days. It wasn't 10, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
But literally it was. If we had come back, it would have been 10 days. But we got arrested on arrival because they thought I was a people smuggler and that the African fisherman that I was with in Senegal. Cargo.
There's a video on like there's like a news station somewhere on YouTube.
Yeah.
It shows like Graham coming in with a boat with these 10 guys. He's the only Westerner, and then like the news are like, "What are you doing with this?" It's like it's hilarious.
Well, there was only one part of this journey that I didn't organise myself. And this was it. And it was organised by the production company of the TV show that they put me in touch with a fixer in. They put me in touch with a fixer in Dakar in Senegal, and this guy he kind of put me on a bit of a bum steer there because he I don't know why. But can I just say this again, because my light's going out and I can see that I'm going dark and light again. Can I just start again?
Yeah, just repeat it. Yeah. I think it should be okay. Usually the recorder will pick it up, but we just roll with it. Go ahead and start over.
Okay, all right. So it was a 4-day journey. I didn't organise it myself. If I had had my way, I would have taken a cargo ship or a yacht, but I was told there was no yacht club in Dakar, and no cargo ships going in there. So, hindsight's always 20/20. I paid these fishermen to take me over, and I thought that was a good idea at the time, but turns out it wasn't. My mum sent a fax to the authorities telling them that I was coming, but she wrote it in English, and they don't really speak English over there. They speak local language or Portuguese, and they read it as a tip-off that this people smuggler was coming. So they were waiting for us in the port. Wasn't so great. One of my dad's friends in Liverpool here is the representative of Cape Verde Islands, and I was expecting the fax to come from him, but he was busy doing something, so it ended up coming from my mum, and perhaps she shouldn't have sent it. I don't know. But we ended up spending 6 days in a little tiny jail cell, which is about 10 foot by 10 foot. No beds, just slept on the concrete floor, all 11 of us.
Wow.
And we were arrested on the Wednesday. On the following Monday, we were put before a judge and finally let go. And the police thought, they thought they had caught the Carlos the Jackal of People Smuggling, and I'm just like, it's just me. It's just I'm just trying to do this thing. And then I thought I'd learnt my lesson after that, and then I got to Congo and I got arrested again. This time, no charges, just held for 6 days again. Don't know what it is with 6 days in African jails, but and that was worse because they took my hat, they took my shirt,
God, not your hat. Not your hat.
And they also took my glasses, and that meant I couldn't see. It's like taking the white stick off a blind man pretty much. I've got a very high prescription. And so I was stuck in this jail cell, bored like crazy. And I didn't want to eat because if I ate, it meant I'd have to use the toilet, which was just a hole in the ground. And there was just not nice substances around it, if you know what I mean. And I had bare feet. So I just didn't eat for 6 days.
Oh my goodness.
Which is quite funny because recently I've done this survival show for Samsung, SOS Island, and I was there at Les Shrouds, and he picked me out a lot because I'd done so much traveling before. Not that I'd done much survival, but he wanted to sort of show me up. It's like, right, okay, you've done your little thing traveling around the world, but how long have you ever gone without food, Graham? And I sort of just go, 6 days in the Congolese jail. And he goes, okay, moving on. Great response. But yeah, that was quite cool. So it's those incidents and those sort of dramas, they're quite traumatic at the time, but I was kind of a bit too angry to get upset about it. I was just kind of like living like, why are you doing this?
Your attitude is really like, you're really lighthearted about this, but you had to have bouts of like just pure frustration or like depression or loneliness and like sleeping on a cement floor 6 days. You're joking about it, but it must have sucked when that happened.
But when I was in Congo, I came up with a really great idea for an Indiana Jones movie set in the 60s, where he teams up with a Mossad agent who looks a bit like Rachel Weisz and has to track down some old Nazis who have stolen Hitler's remains and are going to resurrect him in West Africa using voodoo.
I like it. Do it.
Yeah, thank you. Get George and Steve on the phone. Come on, guys, we're making this. Make up for the abomination that was the last one. Jesus. Wow. Aliens, come on, please. No.
You could do much better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal Scott's question. He always asks. He always says, how did you finance? How did you finance? Or how did you manage to? Did you just keep expenses really low? Were you managing a job on the side? Were you taking time to jump on the computer and do some work? What'd you do to keep yourself afloat?
I saved up £10,000 before I started. I was paid some money by the production company, not very much for a year of my life, but never mind. And that paid for another sort of £10,000, and then the last £7,000 that I spent came from sort of family and friends who chipped in to help me finish the journey, who I still need to pay back. And so I'm not in any massive debt. I've got back, but I spent this is over the course of 4 years. I spent £27,000. Wow. And something that I'd like to, that's about $37,000, $38,000. And something that I'd like to stress, I mean, people say, how can you afford it? And I say, well, how can you afford rent? How can you afford to own a cat or a dog? Or how can you afford to have children? Or how can you afford to smoke? Because in this country, it's £7 for a pack of cigarettes now. And if you smoke 20 a day, which is one pack, that comes to about £3,000, I think, something like that. And for £3,000, you could live in Vietnam for 6 months at least, eating out, drinking every night. It's only 30 cents for about 50 cents for a beer over there. So imagine how far your beer tokens get you in Vietnam. And I think it's one of the big lies about travel is that it's expensive. I kept my costs down by couch surfing, so I was staying with local people. I slept on buses and trains overnight, so that was accommodation paid for and transport. I hitched rides on cargo ships. I wasn't charged for traveling on those.
Oh, really?
Hitched rides on. Didn't pay for. I had to pay a little bit of extra insurance for a couple of them, but most of them just let me on board, which was just amazing for these involved. And respect to them. When the book comes out, they'll get their own page to say thank you. And I think what people have seen so far of people traveling, whether it's sort of in this country, it's Michael Palin, Ewan McGregor, Charlie Borman, Alan Wicker. I mean, they make great shows, don't get me wrong, but they all seem to be millionaires. They all seem to be people who have a lot of money and a lot of time on their hands. And I think a lot of people watching it think, I'd love to do that, but I just can't because, X, Y, Z. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. But once you actually get out there, you can teach English as a foreign language. You can actually live somewhere for a year, 2 years, and come back with more money than you went away with. And that's not that difficult to do. I think the hardest part of travel is just deciding to go, and that's the toughest part. And once you decide where you're going to go and how long you're going to be there, these days, I mean, even homesickness doesn't really come into it because we've got Skype, we've got Facebook. I saw a friend of mine who I hadn't seen for 5 years last night, and it was just like I'd seen her last week because I knew everything she'd been up to because Facebook just keeps me all updated, and she knew everything I'd been up to, and it was just like, oh, hi, how you doing? How did that thing go? And it wasn't a case of like, oh, please tell me what you've been doing for the last 5 years, as it would have been, a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, the internet's made travel so much easier, logistically and sort of psychologically as well.
I was just talking to somebody last night. I was explaining how I had to get up at 7:30 in the morning after hanging out in New York City for the first time in a few months. I knew that would be tough. He's like, "Well, why are you doing it? Why do you have the podcast?" I said, "Well, part of the reason for me is that I want to. Obviously, we deal with a lot of different subjects and guests and whatnot, but part of the reason is I want to show people that travel isn't this thing that you can do only if you're rich or if you have a ton of time. Normal people doing travel or doing amazing things. It's like, but it's not like they have superpowers. It's not like they're independently wealthy. Like you can do this too, and that's the whole thing.
I do have some superpowers. They're not very. They're not very useful for the X-Men, but I can sleep anywhere. So, when they're all fighting Magneto, I could be like having a kip, which is good. I don't get bitten by mosquitoes, which is a bit of a superpower.
Oh, that is a superpower.
They don't like me. I think that I'm ginger. I don't know. They're like girls when I was a teenager. And then my other superpower is waking up at the right time. Like I don't need an alarm clock. I just go, right, I need to wake up at 7 a.m. and I wake up at 7 a.m., which is a bit odd, but I can do it. I don't know how it works exactly, but it's a superpower. And they're really useful for, if you've got to be up in the morning after a nice and the sauce. And
those three things combined are like just extreme superpowers. No, all right, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep under this desk curled up. There's lots of bugs, but I won't get bit, and I'll wake up at 5:30 to catch the 6 a.m. bus.
Boom.
Huge.
But they are useless superpowers when it comes to battling, comic book super villains.
One question I haven't heard anyone ask you. Tell me the story about your hat.
My hat,
because this is like you have it all the time. I don't know if you have multiple of these hats, but
I do.
There's got to be a story behind this.
The hat's a bit like Doctor Who. It has regenerations every time one dies. Another one comes to take its place, but it's always the same essential hat. So hat one I got in Alice Springs in Australia. It's kangaroo leather. It's a brilliant thing to have because for traveling you can scrunch it up and it pops back into shape. You can use it as a pillow. When you're on a bus and the window's cold or it's hot, maybe in a hot country, you can put it as a little bit of a buffer zone between you and the window so you can sleep. You can use it to fan you when you're really hot, which is great. It's like your own portable fan. Obviously, it stops me getting sunburns on my face because I have very pale skin. I sunburn very easily. It stops people knowing that you're going bald, which is also a good thing. And also, it keeps the rain off you and everything. And also, it's something that people recognise now. So, when I'm walking down the street and I'm wearing the hat, people are more likely to pull me out and say, "Oh, you're that guy who travels." So the hat and the glasses, it's part of my sort of makeup. Yeah. But the first hat I got in 2002, that lasted for a few years. I lost it. I got drunk with the Scissor Sisters at a festival, and I got absolutely hammered. And then I remember, because it was the Pixies had just reformed, and I was so excited. And I got into the crowd, and I was that drunk. I don't know what happened. I think I was crowd surfing, and then I woke up, and I was like, this isn't a Pixies song. And they'd finished, and the Strokes were on. And I was like, what? Where's my hat? And I lost my hat. Hat 2, I've forgotten what happened with Hat 2. They've all got a story. I think Hat 2 I lost when I was in Thailand again, drunk, had a fight with a tree in a half moon party. Hat 3 disappeared in time and space, like one of the Babylon stations in Babylon 5. Hat 4, I think I started traveling maybe with Hat 4, and that shrank while I was traveling because I was trying to wash it, because obviously it's a leather hat, it's quite heavy, and when you're sweating all the time, the band at the front starts to whiff somewhat. And so I was trying to wash it, and apparently it's used bicarbonate soda. I just put it in a washing machine and basically hung it out, and it just shrank. So that's still at home. I've still got that hat. And then the next one I lost in Bali, another drunken escapade. I was on the back of a motor bike taxi getting back from somewhere, and it fell off my head as I was driving.
I'm noticing a theme here, a recurring theme.
Yeah, get drunk, lose hat. And that next hat went pretty well. That went for about 2 years of travel, and then I was in Taiwan in a pub, and some people wanted to pose a photo with me, and one of them took my hat and put it on himself. And then, I got the camera and everything, and I turned around and was like, well, where's that guy gone with my hat? And they went, oh, we weren't with him. And he just basically picked my hat up off my head while I was posing for him and walked off with it. So the manager of the bar was like so apologetic. He let me watch the CCTV footage, and he was like, I saw my hat just walking out, and I was so angry. I was just really upset. And it meant that when I went to two of the last 4 countries that I had to visit, 2 of the last 7 or something, Federated States of Micronesia and Palau, I had no hat, and I just burned. Burned. I was like skin flaking off, and I was like, damn that person to hell. And then I got my then girlfriend sent me a new hat from Australia. She's Australian, and I picked that up in Hong Kong, and that lasted less than a week. She still doesn't know this, but basically, again, I was out having a drink, and I just woke up in the morning, and I was like, "You're kidding me!" So I had to.
Have you ever thought of having like a leash?
Another one without girlfriend finding out. I had to secretly order another hat. So I picked that up in Singapore, and that's this one. And so this one's been from Singapore to Sri Lanka, all the way from South Africa to South Sudan. This has been to the top of the Great Pyramid in Egypt and down again, and then it's come all the way up through Europe and home. So this is the final hat. I'm hoping to keep hold of this one.
First of all, have you thought of a tether? And second of all, I thought climbing the pyramid was kind of illegal. How did you do that?
I did it with when I was first in Egypt on this trip. I stayed with a girl from Boston called Kendra, and she was my couch chef host, and we hung out for a few days. She was a really good laugh. Huge Star Wars fan. Like even I flew over to New York to watch Star Wars Episode 1 in 1999 when it came out, which I thought was the height of geekdom. She camped outside Man's Chinese Theatre in LA for like 4 weeks to see it. We call it the Great Disappointment. It's a bit like, the Jehovah's Witnesses when they don't get taken up to heaven or something. My generation, Star Wars Episode 1. Great. Anyway, so we kept in touch, and then about a year later, I got a message from her going, "Yo, you never guess what? Last night we went into the pyramid complex in the middle of the night, and there's no one guarding the pyramids, and we climbed up the small one, the third one." And I was like, "Oh my God, next time I'm in Egypt, we are so climbing the Great Pyramid." Yeah. And so I kept to my word, and I was there after I finished my journey. I got to South Sudan last November, and then in December I managed to get through. I had to sort of go back down on myself because I couldn't go.
How do you logistically get from like your place to South Sudan? You just take a route of buses? Is that how you went?
Well, I was going from. I knew I had to go to South Sudan last because it had already become a country, and I just hopped off a cruise ship that taken me to Maldives and Seychelles. And that dropped me off in Reunion Island, the French island in the Indian Ocean. I got the ferry over to the Maldives, and then from there I took a Maersk ship which took me into Durban in South Africa. Then I got a bus from Durban to Johannesburg, and then a bus that goes literally all the way from Johannesburg through Zimbabwe, through Harare, up to Lusaka in Zambia. Then I got another bus to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and then a bus to Nairobi in Kenya, to Kampala in Uganda, and then another bus up to South Sudan. That took less than a week. And then from there, I had to get into North Sudan, but the borders closed and angry. So I went back into Uganda, across to Kenya, up to Ethiopia, and then I had to get a Sudanese visa in Ethiopia, which is impossible.
Tell me about it.
I don't know. They felt sorry for me somehow, and so up going through Khartoum up to. I went to the Meroe Pyramids, which is amazing. It's very hard to get to.
Where is that?
Complex to myself. It's just it's about 100 kilometers north of Khartoum. Yeah, and it's on the Nile, and it's the southern. I think it's the most southern reach of the ancient Egyptian Empire that used to come all the way down the Nile. And then I headed up to Egypt, and I met up with Kendra again. And I said, right, we're going to climb the Great Pyramids tonight. So she got 3 of her friends, Egyptian friends, who were all called Mohammed. So it's 3 guys called Mo. And we went out at 2 in the morning. We bought special gloves to wear to climb with, and we climbed over the fence. And they've got these CCTV cameras all along on poles, but you can actually see the cables have been pulled out at the back. So no one's watching. The only things that are watching the pyramid complex at night, the dogs. There's pyramid dogs that make a lot of noise, so that kind of freaks you out a little bit, to say the least.
Wow.
And ended up going past the small pyramid, past Chepham's pyramid, and then we got to Khufu's pyramid, and we started climbing up, I think, the southwest corners. We'd researched it online, the best corners to climb up. It's a really nice climb, actually. It's not too difficult. You're not like pulling yourself up so much.
Some of those blocks are huge, yeah, right.
But you can find bits where it's kind of broken a little bit, so it's easier to get up. And got up to the top, and it was just amazing. We got there about 4 a.m. and about 5 a.m. the call to prayer rang out from Egypt now, from Cairo. You got Cairo down here, and Giza's on the plateau. It's up a bit higher, and so we're looking down on the biggest city in Africa, which Cairo is, and we just hear this sort of ghostly murmur from one corner of the city, calling out. And the call to prayer can be quite irritating if it's right next to your hotel room or your apartment when you're in a Muslim country. It wakes you up in the morning. This was beautiful, and it was joined by another ghostly murmur from the other corner of the city. And then within a couple of minutes, there were hundreds of voices all crying out from the city, and the 3 Mohammeds got down to pray on top of the Great Pyramid. They found out which way was Mecca, and they got their prayer books out, and that was just, I'm not a spiritual person, I'm not religious or anything, but I just found that a really amazing moment of my journey at the end of it, there to be on top of the last great wonder of the world, with the adrenaline of climbing up that thing. It only would have taken one guy with a whistle to stop us, but no one guards them overnight. So yeah.
When is your book? When is your book coming out, man? You have, how many stories? You have so many stories. It's amazing.
I don't know. Do you know any book publishers who might be interested in a really interesting set of anecdotes about? Because I can't find it. I've said this before. I should have just slept with a footballer, and then I would have got a book deal. I just went to every country in the world. It took me 4 years. I've been here all year. Until a couple of weeks ago, I was still living at my parents' house because I've got no money for rent. So I kind of expected at the end of it that there would be a book deal and that I could live off the sort of the advance of that for this year, but things just haven't gone that way. And I've had people call me up going, "Oh my God, I'm so interested in your amazing story." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, well, here's all the information about it. Here's a pitch for the book, and here's a pitch for, and they don't get back to me."
I do have some connections, and I'll send them to you later on. Yeah, we'll see. Cool. We'll get that book out.
All right, please do, because I've got a background, so you can name a country, and I could probably tell you a funny story about my time there. Wow. Like the Philippines. I like to say that I was rescued from Muslim fundamentalists by a ladyboy called Jen, and it's a great title, but really the story's quite a little bit funnier than that. I was on a boat heading over from Sandakan in sort of northeastern Borneo, Malaysian Borneo, over to Zamboanga, which is in Mindanao in the Philippines. And Mindanao is torn apart at the moment by terrorist actions by a separatist Muslim fundamentalist group called, amusingly, MILF, the Mindanao Islamic Liberation Front. And I just think that the Philippine government should make a force to combat them and call it Cougar Force, because that would be so funny. Mills versus Cougars. Hey, there are these little islands between Sandakan and Zamboanga called the Sulu Islands. They're next to the Spock Islands, near the Kirk Islands, and then the Bones Islands. And Sulu Islands, they're Muslim islands, and they want independence from the Philippines, because the rest of the Philippines is Christian. So it's a schism along religious lines, and they believe they have an historical case for this. And I was chatting to guy who was, he had a dossier that they were going to give to the UN to explain why Zulu Islands should be given independent nation status, historical reasons. But he wanted to. His idea was that they were going to set up a Sharia law thing. They were going to have, someone in charge who was like a sultan or something. I was like, you're going to the UN saying that you're going to set up a dictatorship that doesn't allow women to do anything. I mean, it's not going to be like, hey, we're going to. And this guy was just talking. He had all this thing, and I was interviewing him. I got it on camera. And then this girl comes over to me and she says, do you want to come and sing some karaoke in the other room? We're having some beers. And I'm like, this guy's really boring. Okay. So I headed off, and she rescued me from these wonderful things with karaoke. and then, amusingly, later on, she showed me her passport, and her name wasn't really Jen, it was James. And I just thought that was hilarious.
Great. Let's shift gears into what you're up to now. But before that, I have two questions just of my own personal interest. How many gigabytes of video footage do you have, and how many passports do you have?
Gigabytes of footage? 7 terabytes, I think. Wow. It's 375 hours of footage that I accumulated on the journey.
Wow.
And what was the other question?
How many passports?
4 passports, 48-page bumper passports, which are filled. Every page is filled on all of them. Because some countries just like spread out all over your passport, like you're lazy. It's like the smaller the country, the more they want to take up of your passport. So you go to Togo in West Africa, it's like 3 pages of your passport. They want the visa on 1 page. They want entry stamp, your stamp for your customs stamp, your stamp to show that you've had your yellow fever vaccination. Then it turned the page when you're leaving, and 3 more big stamps there. You went to Togo. You forget it. It's quite cool. Yeah, so my passports look awesome, and I've scanned them all. They're all online. If you go to the odysseyexpedition.com, all this stuff's there. There's videos, there's blog entries of every day that I was away. It's kind of like time locked now, and it's there as an artifact of my journey. I don't know anymore. And it's also got a GPS map, because I had a little GPS logger which took my position every 15 seconds.
Which Sony GPS did you use? Because that was like your go-to for a long time, right?
Yeah. What was it? GS1 or something? It was the very, very basic logger. It had no screen on it. It just takes your position every 15 seconds. And it's got a flashing light to tell you if it's getting data or not. But for the last 2 years of the journey, the flashing light didn't work. So I just had to kind of guess. And obviously, if you're inside, you're in a cruise ship and you've got an internal cabin, there's just no way you can get a signal. Yeah. So I've got these vast areas, where there's no signal. And also, if I was on a train with overhead power cables, it didn't seem to work. So I have a nice straight line going from Lhasa to Beijing, which might make it look like I flew, but I didn't. I put the job me on the train for days. And when you buy the ticket, they're like, okay, do you want a bed? Do you want a soft seat or a hard seat? And I'm like, what's the price difference? And it's about $20 to go from Lhasa to Beijing as a 2-day journey on a hard seat. So I went, okay, I'll take the hard seat. How hard can it be? It was a plastic molded seat like you would get on a commuter train, an underground train or something. Not even as comfortable as the underground, maybe like the New York subway trains. It was just molded plastic straight up like this. You couldn't recline it. And it was 3 people going on one side, and there was a table and 3 people facing you. And I ended up having to sleep like this, like just sitting upright. There's no other way of doing it. And fending off the Chinese guys, like trying to sleep on my shoulder. No, don't sleep on my shoulder. No, don't sleep on my shoulder. But we ended up playing cards with these guys. Cards are great. You should always take a pack of cards when you're traveling. It's a real good travel tip, because people play cards all over the world, and even if they don't know how to play cards, learn a few magic tricks. I've got a trick, and it's dead simple. It's just a proposition bet. I force them to take the card that I want them to take. They pick it out of the deck. I pretend I don't know what I'm doing, and then say, okay, I'm going to find your card. So shuffle them. And I don't touch the cards. I'm like, shuffle them. So they shuffle them up really well, and thinking, he's never going to find it. Give me the deck back. And I turn the cards out over and over like this. And then I go past their card, and they see it on the table, and they're thinking, he's messed this up. And I just keep going. And then I say, the next card I turn over, I bet you a beer. The next card I turn over is your card. And they go, you idiot. No, yeah, you can have it. Yeah, and they shake on it. And then instead of turning over the card I'm holding, I turn over the card that's on the table. I know it's theirs. Beer. And on my journey, I must have got over 200 beers using that trick. So it's
The great magic trick.
Traveling on the cheap. Yeah.
Now, cards, I think, break the language barrier. Sometimes you can play games with people and you don't need to be speaking the language, but you can kind of get the gist of the game, and it's a nice connecting point.
And that's another fear factor for people. There's the money, the expense, the time, the fact that we get a lot of sort of negative news about countries on the TV and the internet. And then you've got this thing of, what if no one speaks my language? And to be honest with you, if you speak English, it's not so hard. There's only a few places in the world left where you will have no one who speaks any English whatsoever. And you know, those places point to what you want. This means I want that. This means how much. I mean, it's not rocket science. You can communicate. You really can. If you write down the name of the place you need to go to. You know, if I'm in a country that doesn't speak any English and I just write down the name of the place and show it to someone, they know I need to go to the bus station. There's no other way of getting there, and they'll point me to the bus station. I might not know the word bus or station or train or anything like that. It doesn't matter. So that's something that I found. I speak a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of French, just kind of, just to get around, like where's the bus station, things like that. And that did me all right. The only country I've ever had problems traveling again, or difficulties, I should say, was China about 10 years ago, when all the signs were in Chinese letters, Chinese characters, which makes it difficult because you're looking at a bus to see which one to get on, and onto the bus it's just the Chinese characters. So you've got to be looking at what Beijing looks like, what characters represent, and making sure. And obviously, to someone who doesn't speak Chinese or read Chinese, those symbols can look quite similar to each other. So sussing that out was difficult. But since they've had Beijing Olympics, it seems that they've made a lot of signs that are in Chinese characters, but also in Western characters as well. So it'll actually say Beijing, or it'll actually say Shanghai or Qingdao or wherever you need to go. So that's made life a lot easier traveling around China. So I think the last difficulty now is probably Russia, which is quite difficult to get around because not like when I was in Kaliningrad in Russia, that no one spoke English. It was difficult.
Before I shift gears, Scott, do you have any questions you want to ask Graham about the Odyssey expedition?
I was actually wanting to hear a little bit, because I know we're running short on time. I wanted to hear about your next projects, your development hell project, and what you're planning on doing from here on out.
Well, yeah, I'll segue that into there.
And the Samsung thing, Samsung. Your show right now. Anyway, go ahead, Matt.
Go on, Matt.
So this is SOS Survivor. It's survival of the smartest. It's like survival with a twist of technology. This has already been filmed, I believe, in Puerto Rico. But what's the gist? I mean, I checked that out a little bit, but what is this? Well, somehow, first of all, you were 16 people out of 11,500 that got selected, right?
Yeah.
Hats off to you, man. That's pretty good.
Thank you. Well, I over the summer, I made a video. I met. I was at a TED conference, and one of the videos, because they have to show a TEDx, have to show a few videos as part of the contract, and there was one that was done by a guy called Caesar Kuriyama, and he did 1 second of his life every day for a year. He just filmed 1 second, and then he put it all together as one video, and it was brilliant. It was just really fascinating, jumping between places. It could just be a birthday cake, it could be a tree, it could be an image from that day, just 30 frames, and then it went on to the next one, and it was very fascinating watching. I thought I could do that with countries, because I've been to every country in the world, and I've got footage of me saying the name of the country I'm in every country. So I put together this video called 1 second. Instead of 1 second every day, it was called 1 second every nation, and it did really, really well. It went it's got about 950,000 views now, and I got a lot of publicity for it. And when I was viewing the video back, just comments and things like that, not that narcissistic, an advert came up for this SOS Island thing on my video. So I was like, this is great. I didn't have the sound on at the time. And I remember seeing in the advert one of these Samsung phones with this on the other side, and I was like, how does that work? How is it a camera and a thing? I was just intrigued by the technology. So I went on the website and I sent them an email. They had a box saying, why should you be a contestant on SOS Island? And I was a little bit arrogant and pushed for time, and I just wrote, Google me. That's it. And the next day, the production company gets in touch, going, we want you to be on the island. So I'm like, Okay, cool. So
wow,
yeah, so it's one of
that's the best application right there. Yeah, just Google me.
That's ballsy. Yeah.
I can't be bold about my whole CV. Just and so yeah, they got in touch, and that was great. And then we were flown off to Puerto Rico for there were 16 of us for boot camp with Les Shroud, Survivor Man guy, and we did that for 5 days, and then they picked 8 people of the 16 to go through to the island. All my friends were saying I was a shoo-in because of my experience already, and because I was quite energetic and making lots of social media videos, and as I'm a filmmaker, that's what came naturally to me. That's what Samsung wanted. But was in the same week, the company Jauntery were doing the best job in the world, where you could travel around the world and get paid for it. And I thought, well, there's no one more qualified to do that than me. And they put me in the top 100, and then to get in the top 50, you had to make another video of your hometown. Now, at that week, I wasn't in Liverpool, my hometown here. I was in New York. So I made an amazing video of a Ghostbusters tour of New York, where I went to all the locations that Ghostbusters were filmed, and like the stairs and stuff like that.
Cool.
And it was amazing. And I didn't make the top 50, and people who could barely string a sentence together and had no camera skills and no presenting skills actually got in the top 50, and that just demoralized me. And I thought, I'm not on this island. And it was a real sucker punch. I do think that I'm definitely in the top 50 travelers in the world at the moment, but obviously don't. But they've made an enemy for life. Let that be known. So anyway, so when I actually found out that I was going to progress to the island to live for 2 weeks, 8 of us in survival circumstances, so we had to build our own shelters. We were just given some fruit each day, or some fish or potatoes if we were lucky, and it was quite sort of. It was cool for me. I was having a great time. Everyone else, some of them had never been camping before. Some, they never slept in a tent for the night, and so they were freaking out a little bit more than I possibly was. But it was a lot of fun. And now at the moment, all the challenge episodes have been filmed. We did a challenge every day. There were 12 of them all in all, and based on the score in our challenges and also the public vote, they're going to pick a winner, and the winning prize is hopefully going to be my next adventure. It's $100,000 towards an island experience of your choice. So you could buy a rock off the coast of Halifax, Nova Scotia, or you could spend the night on Richard Branson's private island, or you could have a big party on an island and get your mates to come. And what I want to do is go back to the island of the island nation of Palau, and stay on an island in the Rock Islands there for a year with my girlfriend, and try and continue this sort of low technology and high technology. Just go there with a machete and a flint and just some things for boiling water in, and see if we can survive, but also have Wi-Fi so we can blog about it. We can keep up with our friends, and we can share that experience, that Robinson Crusoe, his Girl Friday experience with the world, and that would be great. I mean, after going everywhere, I'd like to do a year of going nowhere and just literally sit on an island and see how that goes.
I don't know if that would take $100,000 to do.
No, but the Wi-Fi thing would probably be quite difficult to sort out. And also there's that thing of, do you rent the island? Do you actually pay to have that island to yourself for a year? Right. That would cost. So, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it. I've got to see if I win. But at the moment, I'm doing rather well in the voting. But if the viewers of this want to see me do that, want me to sit on an island for a year, seeing if I survive or starve to death, that they can go over to sos-island.com/vote and vote for me. I'm currently in the lead, so keep voting.
Nice.
Yeah, Graham.
Nice.
Yeah, man, we're gonna, for listeners, all the stuff that you want to find on Graham, whether you're watching this show right after it airs or later on, we'll link up to some of his nice entry points. You can also just Google Graham Hughes, and you can find a lot of stuff. So that's awesome, man. I think it's pretty exciting. You got some cool stuff going on. We'll be keeping an eye and cheering you along and do what we can to help.
There's always another adventure. That's the way
but wait. What about development hell? What about your journey to become a movie star?
Well, this is no, not a movie star, a legendary director. Well,
director, yes, yeah.
I'm a filmmaker. This is what I do in Liverpool, in England. I make films. They can't be corporate films or music videos or show reels for actors and things. Worked on TV shows, obviously. My own TV show for National Geographic. So, but I want to go to Hollywood. I want to tell big stories. You know, it's. I was interviewed for the BBC recently as a documentarian, and they asked me, you know, what makes an interesting story, and I was like, robots, explosions, aliens, and they're like, no, we're British, we don't like that kind of thing. I'm like, oh, you must have a strong central protagonist. Oh, bollocks, no, I want robots and explosions and aliens. And there's a very snooty part of Europe, and that believes that, you know, oh, that's a Hollywood movie. But actually, a lot of great films were made within the studio system. Citizen Kane was made within the studio system, kind of. You know, it was studio that made for that. The Godfather, Star Wars, you know, these awesome movies, Shawshank Redemption, were made by a studio with a great script, great actors, and a really good director. And that's sort of the kind of progress that I'd like to make after my travels are done. So I think for the next few years, I'm going to be traveling some more, writing some more scripts. Hopefully someone in Hollywood will read one of them, go, my God, this is amazing, and make a movie of it. Give me lots of money as an option or something. Then, you know, once I've sold a few scripts, I'll do that thing that a lot of Hollywood directors do, is they start off as a script writer. Quentin Tarantino did this. He wrote True Romance and Natural Born Killers. And then with the money from selling the scripts, actually start making your own films over there. So, yeah, that's my plan. And they won't be British, gritty, period, kitchen sink dramas, gangster movies. That's what we seem to make over here, and it just depresses me. I think this is the litmus test for a movie, and this goes out to all wannabe filmmakers in the world. Listen to me on this one. If the plot of your wannabe movie would segue seamlessly into the plot of a soap opera, it's not a movie. Don't make it. Do not make it, because no one is going to pay to watch a woman from Manchester get beaten by her husband and then commit suicide. It's just it might win awards at the, you know, at European film festivals, but you're not going to make your money back. Let's face it. Entertain the people.
Hey, that's perfect for TV, though.
Show business. Yeah,
I can see that on Lifetime. There's a channel over here called Lifetime, and it's a bunch of movies like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that's in America at the moment, a lot of us filmmakers kind of now want to get into television more than film, because we're watching stuff like Breaking Bad and Mad Men and Game of Thrones and going, oh my God, this is better than 90% of the stuff that's coming out of the cinemas at the moment. Boardwalk Empire, the first episode was directed by Martin Scorsese. And you can't beat that. That's amazing. It's, you know, someone coming from the world of film to television and making something really dramatic and cool.
Do you think that you mentioned, you said like, oh, well, I'm going to travel some more and then I'm going to do this. Like, are you going to be able to stop traveling? That's always something that I've been wrestling with. Like, will I stop traveling? I don't think so.
I don't think I ever will. Wherever I hang my hat for the night is my home. I love travel. I love waking up in new places, new experiences. I don't know if this comes from being European, but I'm in Liverpool at the moment. I can drive half an hour down the road and I'm in another country. I'm in Wales, and they speak a different language and they have a different culture, and it's Welsh, and all the road signs are in different languages. And I love that. I love the fact that I'm on the doorstep of Europe. There's 50 countries in Europe, and they've all got their own customs, they've all got their own food, and obviously food is a huge thing about travel. And I think if I lived somewhere like Australia or the US and it's kind of a little bit the same in all directions, I might find that frustrating. I like to have the variety, and it is indeed the spice of life. And I want to encourage people to do it, to go and travel and experience these things, because you know, it's a cliche, but travel does broaden the mind, and you don't meet that many homophobes or racists or neo-Nazis when you're traveling. You know, backpackers. They don't travel. They don't go to these places around the world, and maybe some that do come back with a whole different perspective on life. And I find that kind of insular mentality comes from people who haven't traveled. It's very hard to be homophobic when one of your best mates is gay. It's very hard to be racist when you've got friends from all over Africa. You know, it's very hard to be, you know, go on about, oh, the Muslims are so terrible when, you know, you climbed up the Great Pyramid with 3 Muslims. You know, it's not. It does make, I don't want to say a better person, but it just gives you a better perspective of the world and life, and the fact that, guys, we're all in this together. You know, we like to think, oh yeah, we're independent nations. There isn't any independent nations left in the world. The ones that try, like North Korea or Burma, they fail because you can't be independent. You need other countries to support you, or you will fail. So, you know, if America couldn't get China to build their iPads and their iPhones. I mean, what would you do if you manufactured one of those in the States? It would cost you about $18,000 for an iPhone with all the components inside. But we are completely dependent on each other, and I like that, because the more dependent we are on each other, the less chance there's going to be of conflict and war and problems like that. And you know, I do feel like the world's getting better. There's very few active war zones left in the world, and it's possible for someone like me to travel on a shoestring budget to every single country and not suffer any major calamities. I didn't get mugged. I didn't get ill. No one robbed my things. You know, it all went quite well.
Wow.
So, you know, I've got a very positive message to share with the world. And if you do have the opportunity to go travel, please go travel, because, you know, one way or another, you'll have a good time, or at least great stories to tell. I'm sure.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up. That was like, you kind of answered a question. You answered a question I was about to ask, which was like, what drives you to continue to move forward and like grow and experience and do these things? And I think that question definitely summarized a lot of views of humanity and kind of how it was a nice touching moment, a nice, I don't know what the word is, but it was nice, a nice place to wrap up. We'll give it back to you in a sec, Graham. But Scott, do you have any final questions or anything that you want to ask Graham?
I've got tons, but unfortunately we're out of time.
Graham, well, I'm going to give it to you, and then at the end we wrap up with a quote that I have prepared. I just want to give you the floor back again for a minute. And first I'll say thanks. Anyone who's watching or listening, any links to Graham's SOS Samsung Challenge, Odyssey Expedition, YouTube channel, things of that sort, go to adventuremetrics.com and you can check out. We'll have all the show notes where you can bounce off. Just Google Graham Hughes. Even if you spell it wrong, it'll correct you, and you'll find all of his doorways into his stuff. Graham, just want to thank you for coming on the show. Give it back to you. Any final words? I know that you like to, imparting message you want to leave to someone who's been listening to us this long.
I like this quote from the video game Grim Fandango, where they're asked, are you scared about where this is going to end? And he says, well, no one knows what's waiting for us at the end of the line, so we may as well enjoy the trip.
Nice. Okay. On that note, I'm not even going to mention my quote. We're going to use your quote to wrap up the show. Folks, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for hanging with us. Graham, pleasure, man. It's been fun hanging out.
Cheers.
If you're listening with us, folks, get out there and explore the world. Keep rocking. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
See ya. Thanks.
Later.
Bye.